right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We've got some exciting news. I even have some confetti here. We have Marcus Montenegro as our newest ace joining us here at Data Meeting. Welcome, Marcus.
Hey, thanks, AK. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here with you guys. It's really an honor to be part of this amazing group right now. Yeah, my first time here, man.
Awesome. I know you
Very
gotta
well
get,
deserved, I would say.
you need one of these fancy boxes, right? I'll flash it for you. Global disco ball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just waiting my box here to put in my in my bag here. I think it'd be
Nice.
awesome, right?
It's gonna look perfect right next to your poster.
Yeah.
I'm still a little jealous of the Brazil crew with their full-on posters of the Alteryx tool set there for periodic table. But I have some plans of this wall on my own back here, so you guys will see it here in good time.
We know, like in our user groups here, we often do giveaways of this poster. So yeah,
I think that's worth a flight, right? I mean, I think that's worth at least a flight down to Brazil, right, to get a poster. I should be ready to go with that one.
sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it'll be awesome.
So we've got a fun and exciting topic. I know we've got a couple of our team members who are being held right now by some calls, but we should have a couple of them, yeah, literally joining right now as we speak. Phew. Fernando, it's like we queued that up. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about APIs. So APIs in general. So guys, if you want to put your questions in the chat, all right. I know as we're kind of submitting, yeah, as a card player seems a bit fishy, right? That's right. We got one ace up our sleeves here at Data Meeting. So as we're kind of talking about APIs, there's some fun new components related to APIs that came out in 21.4 with Alteryx Server, right? So we'll be touching a little bit on those. And then if you're just sinking your teeth into APIs in general, we'll be talking about different things that you can do, some of our favorite ones to learn with, right? And just kind of keeping things fresh, right? So does anybody remember the first API that they were working with? That could be our question today that we talk about.
I think one of the first that I worked with was a very simple one that we could get the currency conversion between the Rio, the Brazilian Rio, and the dollars. So we connect to the website of the central bank here, and it doesn't require a lot of configuration or those weird calls that you have to request tokens and stuff. So yeah, it was just pretty straightforward where you would pass the dynamic parameters to get the currency conversion at that date and time. So
come on, Thales, you're telling me your first one didn't have MFA and
no. I was just too newbie to actually know that.
Yeah. What about you, Fernando? Do you remember? Or Marcus? Nope, you're on mute, Fernando.
I'm on mute, Fernando.
I think his was the MIME API.
I think his API failed.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I think one of the first one was the one Thales just mentioned. So I think a lot of us did that. I'm not sure why. We've had tutorials for that, but that was one of the first one that I tried doing. Another one was one for one website called Vagas here in Brazil. So the idea was to build an example where I was able to scrape all the website for all the jobs there. And that's all I did. Actually, we had a lot of opportunities to analyze the data, but I didn't do any of that. But I have the data set with all the jobs posted on a daily basis there. And that would be great for us to also analyze how many jobs you have during the days. But that's something that I didn't do.
Nice.
Yeah, now I'm jealous of you guys because I already my first API usage was already with Alteryx server. So yeah, you guys already did, many good stuff before it. But my first API call was with Alteryx server to list and download workflows from the server. And actually, that one I did with Thales' help. When when it started on that,
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. My first one, I think, was actually the Amazon Web Services back in the day. So technically, it's merchant services. So whenever you're selling on Amazon, they had a bunch of API endpoints to like do simple things like gather reports. They were much easier back then than they are today. I'll say that. It was kind of like Dallas was talking about. And they were probably one of the better documented API endpoints back in the day. So this almost ties to Aaron's question here. How many years of Alteryx experience combined do we have on the show today? I don't even think we know. It's probably definitely 20 plus years.
I think so.
Yeah.
20 plus.
Probably.
Actually, that's not
correct.
even true. More than that, because I'm at almost 13 now. So yeah, so maybe like 25. And then if you include Treyson, I think, yeah, we're probably hitting close to 30 years of experience. So yeah, that's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
incredible.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, as we're talking about APIs, right, you've got tons of people talking about some of their favorite ways to connect to them or what they're using. So you've got Roberto with Python and Google APIs, right, saying that Zixby was his first ones, right? And then this is me just telling Carlos that, yes, I do want that periodic table of tools. So now it's on record. This is recorded, Carlos. So I'll be holding you to that one. And then it looks like he had some shared experience with you guys in relation to the Alteryx server, Carlos. See, you're not alone. You're not the only ace that was their first API connectivity.
Exactly. I'm with you, Carlos. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so what did you guys want to start off with first? Do you want to talk about the new API endpoints with the Alteryx server, or do you want to talk about APIs in general?
Up to the new API endpoints. I think it's still a bit of a new topic to me.
Yeah.
And that's because yeah, Alteryx. I think Alteryx launched the stable version of 21.4 like 2 weeks ago, right? So we're still planning to upgrade our server again to play more with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to work more with that and new endpoints. From the administrator perspective for our Alteryx server, looks like we will start to have many possibilities right now. And actually, some situations I already faced in my work. I really like to have these endpoints. So, for example, I already was asked before to can provide a temporary access to specific data connections, and that temporary access before the endpoints is something I need to remember when I need to exclude the person from the data connections. But right now, with the new endpoints, we will have more possibilities to do that in automated ways. Right now, we have endpoints to can remove someone from a data connection. So I can just schedule a workflow for that.
Yeah, and I think the other main point is, remember when we used to mess Mongo databases around there? We won't be doing that anymore, right? So I guess
Yeah,
the
man.
API comes to make it easier, right? Because it was hard to keep track of all the MongoDB changes, and it was not even recommended by Alteryx support to add it the database itself. So with the API, you have a safer way to do that. Yeah, without to mess up with your let's say mess up directly with your production environment and putting down anything related to the gallery itself. So
Yeah, just avoiding the MongoDB is a huge game we have here, man. I always do, a little mess when I'm studying MongoDB because we have many connections inside there, many
Yeah.
collections, and when you just remove one thing from one, you doesn't even know how many other collections can be affected by that. So when I study MongoDB, man, I always find new things.
It's really trial by fire, right? Like you
Exactly.
just good luck. I hope you took a good backup is almost what it feels like sometimes. And I think
Exactly.
that's one of the pieces that I find exciting as we continue to progress, right? With the API endpoints is I actually am sitting here and I'm like, pick me for the admin now, right? Because as we kind of look at the amount of work that you can automate for yourself as an admin, it's going to increase exponentially, which we saw this before, right? Whenever AAH came out, that was probably one of the most exciting pieces. And now we're seeing that translate over into the server product as a whole, right? So as we kind of look at this, it's not just collections and where workflows are. It's transitioning workflows between environments. We can do that now. So if you have CI/CD processes or processes related to um, the product development lifecycle, right? Then you can essentially roll that into SDLC, right? Those are the pieces that I'm most excited for because now we don't have to like literally shift, manually change things and adjust them and then bring them into a new environment. We can automate some of that movement.
yeah, I remember that on V1 we could actually move workflows, but that was it, right? We
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to put them in the right collection, schedule them appropriately using the API, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was just such a big improvement because now we can definitely move things or move everything around, maybe basically perform any operation
Yeah.
in the gallery without having to use a manual intervention or even, like we said, messing up with the Mongo database.
Yeah, I think even for the onboarding process of new hires, so you could include everything using APIs, right? So including a new user to a collection, to a data connection, and everything related to that could be automatic. Of course, that's what we are aiming to do, but as you always say, okay, baby steps, right? But that's something that we
Yeah, I
could
think
we could base our server on an Excel file with all the commands for us to connect to
Yeah.
the APIs, right?
Exactly.
yeah, think about a new hire, join to the gallery, and you want that person to have all the same access any other user have, in data connections and that stuff.
Hmm.
And maybe that other person have dozens of data connections access. And what you can do before that endpoint, you can the maximum you can do is list the data connections, look in
Hmm.
the database or something, and you need to go there and add in each data connections that new person if you don't use groups. But right now with the endpoints, you can just replicate all the connections to a new user. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that is Like even as we are excited about some of those pieces, right? There were groups and stuff that were in the server before. This just adds more flexibility to that, right? And I think when we talk about that flexibility, it's always been outside of Alteryx, which may be where we learned some of these techniques, right? So when we talk about server API endpoints outside, right? So Thales, you had mentioned currency exchange. Like, tell me the story behind like why that mattered. Like, why did learning that matter, and how did it help the business that you were working at the time?
Yeah, I think the main problem is getting the data in at the time that you're running your workflow, right? So APIs are basically done to solve that problem, to automate that process, make real time calls, right? We when we think about it, the currency conversion, it's changing all the time, right? Currency um, can change all the time. So in a real time world where we need that data right away, and we need to pull that from an official website, from an official institution, to actually make those conversions and make financial reports out of global companies or out of departments that export products or import products. We see a lot of value in that because we can get that data, that conversion at real time at that moment. So we do the appropriate math on what we're working with.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting because I was reading a LinkedIn report last night, and they were talking about changes in industry from a disruption perspective in relation to skills, right? So on LinkedIn, if you check it out, they have something called a skills genome, which is essentially like each person has their own DNA, right, of how they've kind of accumulated their skills, right? So you may technically have the same job title, but your skill set may not be the same. And what they're trying to highlight is the fact that when we look at these skills, API skills as an example, right? There's different levels that those skills entail, and how do you essentially map those? And then what was your journey to get there? So if we were looking for similar profiles or people, right, to hire, which when they talked about skills hiring, those were 60% more likely to stay more than a year in their position, right? So it was a huge difference. And what was interesting with this is they were talking about that actually also related to other fields. So bringing this full circle to finance, right? Finance, what do you think one of the top skill sets is for finance individuals in the industry? It's actually currency. Like a forex trader, right? So currency trading. So what's interesting about that, Thales, is I remember, this will really date me. I remember back when I was in college, right? The only thing we dreamed about that had anything like that was you either got a Thinkorswim platform, right, on TD Ameritrade, which meant you had to have a lot of money for trading, or if you really wanted the full depth of data, you had to have like a Bloomberg terminal, which those are $10,000 a year, right? Like it's an insanely expensive subscription. And now literally, Thales, you're telling me, hey, I can get these APIs for free, right? The data is pretty timely with those, right? So you can make most of your decisions, which literally means when we talk about these skills, right, which was proof in the component from a finance perspective, right? If you have those skills around subject matter knowledge around forex trading, and you have the skills that you're talking about, right? The possibilities are endless in regards to what you can create and how you can make money, whether that's on the side or if that's something that you're doing during your day job.
Yeah, and just to include Alteryx in that journey itself, it's so easy to configure the download tool, right? You
Yeah,
just set up
exactly.
the URL there and pass the dynamic parameters, the dates, the times that you want. there you go. You have the data. It's you don't have to be like a true IT expert to do that. So I think that's what I found very interesting when I was messing with that API as well.
Yeah, and I'll actually share my screen here real quick because there's a really cool website. I'll post it here in the chat. Let's see. It's gonna let me share. Come here. We'll do this guy here. So this is actually rapidapi.com. So if you check out this site, literally all these are different APIs. And the majority of them, like you can see, are literally free for developers. So, and this is basically an aggregator site. The advantage here is we kind of look at this, right? You can see Open Weather API, right? I love the weather APIs, but they just like come and they go. They disappear all the time. So that can be a little frustrating whenever you're kind of developing these things, but this allows for some level of standardization. And you can see it'll have your keys and stuff here. I'm flashing all that on the screen right now. And then literally as you look at this, it'll give you a sample of the call. And then you'll see a little pricing tab up here, but it's going to have a basic subscription where you can do 500 a month, right? And some of them are unlimited, others are 10, but it gives you a huge variety. Everything from like jokes, you saw weather on there. There was the Google API endpoints, right? So this is a really awesome source where you sign up in one place, and then now your learning pattern is kind of standardized if you're trying to learn this new skill around API endpoints. So literally we could take this, right, and we could say finance here, and then this is literally going to do all the finance ones that they have. And you can see there's 4 pages of different ones, everything from stocks, right, exchange rates, Fidelity investments, right, the whole works, and Yahoo Finance. That was
Just
definitely
a
back in the day.
comment here, AK. If
Yeah.
you go to the final here, very bottom,
Yeah.
yeah, actually in the API list is yet. So the last one I really like it
Just because
by
it's ninjas.
API ninjas. Yeah, that's my crew, man.
Exactly. Exactly. Why do you think it's so popular here? Look at that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
This one's actually pretty good. The joke one that they had was really good. And you can contribute in this way, right? So if you're learning new APIs or you have a specific one, hey, maybe I'm having trouble with this type, then that allows you to explore different ways on how to connect and gives you some examples. So you're not alone in this adventure, right?
Yeah, and I think the key for most of the APIs is to read the documentation and understand the costs of making the calls, right? Of course, because you don't like. Well, so sometimes when I went to play with some API there, like I find like maybe I have a free service, but then when I look at the API cost, I see, oops, I make like 100 calls or whatever in a month, or maybe if it's more real time data in a day, right? And
Yeah,
then it's like, okay, and then I get an error, right? You have to get more credits, right?
exactly. Some
So
of those
yeah.
even some of those even charge like per record, right? And
Mhm.
they don't care whether you ask for the same record over and over again. So especially like when you're working with things like Alteryx, right? You may be thinking, oh, I'm going to hit that run button and just keep hitting it. APIs, I think, are a good thing that you definitely want to hit the cache on, right? If you're
Mhm.
trying to develop other rules, maybe for parsing like JSON, that's a good way from a best practices perspective to kind of relate to those.
Yeah, I find people who were book readers, they actually do a lot better with APIs because they have the patience to read through the documentation point to point, right? Because sometimes it depends, right? Some APIs are the documentation is not very clear. You have to kind of do like a try and error thing to understand how it works. And even like to like for example, there are so many endpoints and you get lost, and maybe you can use like less endpoints than you're thinking of because some endpoints expose more data than the others, right? So there's also that kind of thing that you have to think about. So yeah, it's fun. It's an adventure whenever I have to connect to something new.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Interesting when we talk about discovering new APIs and we need to go to the documentation because the relationship we have with APIs is always like a hate and love documentation in the documentations because if you have a poor documentation, it will be hard to understand the API and probably you hate that. But at the same time, if you have a so big documentation for API, you start to be lost in the documentation, and it will be a little boring to you read so much, and we start to hate that as well. So yeah, for book readers, that's awesome because you have many things to read, man. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting when we talk about this because it definitely translates to like command line as well. So talking a little bit about like AWS, right? So they have the CLI, and if you start learning about some of these things, the the amount of control that you can have or the capabilities is endless. You end up feeling like Neo in the Matrix, right? That moment when he starts to see the code, it all kind of aligns and it's like, oh yeah, I'm plugged in. I can do whatever, right? I can dodge all the bullets where like I don't have to worry about authentication anymore, right? I can do all these sweet moves like jump across buildings because they're like, I didn't even know these two things could connect, right? And you start getting excited about the possibilities. And an example of this, right, that I'm excited to see coming is the acquisition of Trifacta, right? So when we talk about the acquisition of this new product and platform and that being integrated into Alteryx, there's an opportunity for the two worlds to really combine and mesh well together. And I think part of that experience, as you highlighted, Thales, is actually this is going to be the first venture for us as ACEs within the Alteryx community, right, where we have a product or a service that does do pay-as-you-go type model, right? So there is a subscription cost, but you actually do pay in part based on usage, right? And I think as we look at the market holistically going forward in the cloud, we're going to have to be more conscious of how we're using things, right? And I think that's the piece that was exciting as an ACE first starting out, or even as an Alteryx user, is I didn't have to worry about fear of failure, right? Like, oh, my code's not going to work, it's going to blow up. I could literally tell exactly where the issues were and I could keep running until I fixed it, right? Some of those things are going to work out from a natural progression perspective. And when we talk about cloud-based platforms, a difference is going to be a lot of those do two things, right? Either they just charge you for every run, or what they do whenever you're developing is they use a sampling method, right? And this can be used like with API calls as well. So you could do like different samples in terms of getting the results. So you don't have to do a full call for the entire data set. So like if you hit up the Google API as an example to do routing, maybe you have a million routes that you need to plan out, but do you really want to run a million routes every single time you do that? Or do you want to do like a simple sample and maybe you start with 10,000 of them, right? And prove out the concept. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, that's super important, but for me, it feels like a problem. I'm always up for the try and error method, so I don't usually read documentation. So for API calls, I usually try searching for the first endpoints, and I do the most basic stuff. And the greatest thing about Outrex is that we don't need to do a lot of rework for us to get that working, right? So It doesn't take a lot of time for me to do 100 try and errors with APIs. Of course, I'm not sure if I'm learning or not, but and it feels like I don't know a lot about APIs, but I know how to connect to all of them.
Yeah,
Not sure if that's knowledge or if that's a lot of try and error, but
that's wisdom at that point, Fernando. You have
yeah, exactly.
the actual scars, right, to prove, hey, I learned trial by fire here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's one thing that I think most people love about Alteryx. That's, of course, we talk about command line and we talk about APIs, and that always seems like something that's only for developers. But I'm not a developer, and even not knowing a lot about APIs or command line, I know how to do all of those things in Alteryx. I don't know how to do any of that in other platform, but in Alteryx I'm able to do, and I think that's
Yeah.
why I'm here.
Well, and I think that's part of when we talk about how is Alteryx allowing individuals to expand those skills, right? So you could do it all natively within the platform that you have access to, right? So all you'd have to do is ask your admin, hey, can I have access to the gallery API endpoints, right? And then as you start to expand those skills, you can do that within the context of Alteryx. And then what I've learned, right, is a lot of those commands, especially if you're going back to Roberto's comment, right, with Python, you can easily translate that into Python, right? And once you translate it into Python, that same script can get carried over to someone else, or they can even let you borrow the script, right? So, hey, I want to learn how to do this, right? Can I borrow the script so I can go ahead and process? Obviously, you may need to ask, is it tied to your credit card, Thales, first before I go and spend all your money, right? But it's an easy way for us to kind of explore some of that and work with people that we've never had the opportunity to collaborate with before. That's really powerful.
Yeah, we always go for the free ones, but not always we're able to do that, right? And it's right. I mean, information's power, right? So it's really a matter of knowing what kind of data you're trying to get. Like for example, I don't know if you guys have ever found something like that, but I've never found an airplane ticket API for free. Never found something like that. I know that a lot of websites work that way, right? Because especially those that compare ticket prices and everything. But I've never found anything like, oh, you can query those websites from those companies and get those prices there, and and make some your personal project or whatever. So they charge for that, obviously, and you can understand, because otherwise, imagine how many people would, um, you know, right?
I'm
uh,
literally checking the site to see if they have anything here, and it's interesting. So a lot of it is like flight times and stuff. They'll give you all the
mhm.
other information, but no pricing. And I think what a lot of companies have figured out, right, is that information is so powerful. The only people that they're willing to give it to are affiliates, right? So I experienced this with Amazon, right? So at first it was, hey, everything's open, it's all free. And you could basically do whatever you wanted. Like literally, that's how when I was working at the vitamin company, right? We were literally able to go in and they would give you the entire list, like fully ranked. What are the products in specific categories, and then they would tell you how much was selling, right? What the ranks were. So then you could just basically say, hey, I want to sell the hottest products and do that. And then now what they do is they're like, I mean, we would love to give you that information, but literally millions of people are trying to ask for that information now, right? Even if you were competing with Amazon as a regular store, right, you may want to change that, what you're selling. So now basically what they're selling is, or what they're saying is, hey, I have to store this information. I have to pay to transfer it to you. So Thales, if you help me sell airplane tickets, right, then I'll let you use this. And then they use like that leaky bucket model, right, where okay, you can do 10 calls, and then if you give me a sale for those 10 calls, I'll make it to where you could do 50 calls, right? And then if you do 50 sales, right, then I'll make it 100 calls, and then we kind of keep going like that. So it's really interesting how they do that.
I think like a lot of tech business today survive because of APIs, I would say, right?
That's very true. That's very
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And I mean, when we talk about being agnostic to connectivity, that's a great way of kind of doing that, right? So there's literally the API endpoints tools within Alteryx that you can use. So you can technically have been even creating some of your own API endpoints relative to your workflows, which is interesting. So as we kind of talk about this journey, it's going to allow us more flexibility in terms of doing this, right? And I think it's just making it more readily accessible, because we could have done all this with Python and just tapped directly into the Mongo database, Marcus, but that may have been a little too crazy, right? From an upgrade
Exactly.
perspective, that's where a lot of customers get concerned, or they slow down their upgrading of their environment because it becomes so highly customized, right? And I think that's part of where we as a team have, that's where that experience comes in, like, because we know a lot of those things and a lot of the history. So anytime we talk to clients who maybe aren't even under support anymore, they've been using the same version of Alteryx Server for like the past 3 years, they're missing all the cool stuff that we're talking about today. And then when they go and look to upgrade, right, they're just like, oh yeah, I can back up my Mongo instance, and then I'm just going to upgrade to the latest version, not realizing there may be some intermediary steps that are helpful along the way to make sure they succeed. So, yeah, awesome. Marcus, is there any APIs that you've been playing with for fun lately?
For fun, yeah, I think we have, you know, kind of a different concepts of fun, but no, just kidding. Yeah, no, but yeah, I was just working a little bit with SharePoint API
Nice.
just to see how, you know, how that works to transfer files and that things. But yeah, as we talked at the beginning, you know, about the documentation, man, Microsoft have so much documentation, but you know, so much documentation. It's really easy to you be lost just reading the documentation.
I
That is,
think
you know what I say.
that's like reading like Lord of the Rings, right? Or trying to read some of the Star Wars books. Like
Yeah,
it's so big, right? It's such a big
right.
universe. You're like, I missed one book and now I have no idea what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, I think they can do a book series about just about the API, and you know, probably that will sell, man. That will sell.
Yeah,
It's many things, and we can even build a story with that APIs. I think, you
exactly.
know.
Let's not steal like the
I'm
Thought
sorry,
Leader
but
Thursday Tableau,
the
the
SharePoint
Tableau story, right?
one, the SharePoint one is one that is, oh my god, it's
Right?
tough to replicate in an enterprise environment.
Yeah,
Like it has so many aspects around it. But in certain forms, I understand a little bit because of they want to add security, right? But with the with the security that they add, they also add they add a complex documentation and complex endpoints as well. But yeah, there are some ones that you just want to just you need to spend like a 1 month 2 month project just to find out, you know, the right way to connect without you know, exposing any leaking any data that you shouldn't, making sure that the right people are accessing the right data, and all about that, right? And we see with the connectors that Alteryx creates, and some of the connectors that are even created by the community itself. There are some of them that it's not a fit all solution, right? There's some of them that you have to, okay, I need to find a different way to connect, 'cause this way, when it's not going to work for the business the way they are set up. And yeah, I think the challenges are more around that, I would say, right, Marcus? I don't know if you would confirm that.
Yeah, I'd definitely echo that. So one of the things that comes up a lot is literally just the API endpoint, right? So I'm thinking SharePoint, Salesforce, all these, right? Even Tableau. Now they're hard coded in there, and sometimes you literally have to open up the hood and then just find what that URL is. So if you're .gov, right, or you have a custom URL, that's become more of a pain point lately that we kind of see. But there's ways that you can kind of work around that and customize the connectors to your environment.
There are some that are like, I'm gonna return you a blob, and then you have to decrypt that blob to get a token and send to another token, and after the third token, you can actually get the data.
Yeah, but remember, Thales, that's only for 60 seconds that you can access the data before you have to start over
True.
again.
Like if you change a little piece of code, everything breaks, and the company doesn't get the data anymore.
I think that's something interesting when we're talking about Microsoft, right? There's so many companies that are looking to interface with that, and especially with a huge push that we've seen with Teams, right? I don't know if everybody knows this, but that's actually the back end of some of that is actually SharePoint. So if ever you have like a Teams team that exists in there, yes, I meant to say that. The Teams team, right? And you have files and stuff in there, or you're using one of the Kanban boards, right? All of that data actually goes into SharePoint. So when we talk about these lists and things that are technically in there, those are all accessible there, or some of them you can even see in like the OneDrive connector, right? So I actually like playing with both of those sometimes because sometimes one is actually easier to connect to than the other. So I guess not everybody can be Amazon and literally have one CLI that connects to literally everything.
Yeah, I think I missed those times that I was working with the currency conversion API.
It's not always so easy, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that was actually trying to get information from. So I was trying to get to use the APIs in Microsoft Teams to get information from a team inside Teams, and I have no idea how to search that in Google. It's not easy for you to find those APIs.
No, it's pretty tough, and I feel like a lot of it is actually tied to Power Automate. And actually, I just saw it the other day. I shared this with one of our colleagues. On the Alteryx Gallery, there's a Power Automate connector now. So literally, if someone's already developed that code, right, don't kill yourself trying to connect to the API. You may just need to do another intermediary tool, right, as a temporary solution even, just to get access to that data. And again, I think that's where Alteryx shines, right? If you're just trying to see whether that data is valuable or decide whether or not the ROI is there, you can extract the information in this manner and then decide whether it's worth the time to go full force and learn the API or, I mean, let's even say doing Power Automate, they charge based off of usage too, right? Now all of a sudden, Fernando, you could decide, hey, if we do this, because this data is so valuable to us, I can save us $10,000 on Power Automate by using Alteryx instead, right? But you've already quantified what the return of the data is actually going to be on it. So it's not some figurative number that you're sharing with your leadership, right? And I think that's a powerful story to always tell is with Alteryx, it's like you highlighted, Fernando, let me just figure out how to get to the solution first, right? And then from there, I can iterate and do it better because there's no wrong answer.
Of course, he always gets couldn't connect to server as the first message. Right?
That part's true.
That's a rule. That's a rule,
Yeah.
man.
Come on, Marcus. You know you love the ambiguous message, right?
Oh no, that's really nice when you get a message like that, and yeah, we just couldn't connect to the server. Okay, but why?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. You just can't. Oh, nice.
Just to be clear, we love Alteryx, but since we like to make jokes about it as well, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Shoot. I think
Exactly.
that comment goes to all API endpoints because they all kind of do that, right? You'll
Yeah.
get the 404, 401s, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
it can be
What
all
did
of
I
those
do
things.
wrong, right?
Exactly. At least Thales, we're not being charged for those ones too. Otherwise, I think
Man,
Fernando would be with a loan shark or someone right now. All the money that he'd have to pay back to for the API calls he's been working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. So what are some tips that you guys have um, for people just starting out with API endpoints or the Alteryx server API endpoints?
I think that the first suggestions for APIs in general, always look for macros or solutions on the community. You don't need to use those, but it's a good way of you to start understanding the different types of APIs that you can connect to. You have a lot of different types of authentication, security, and things like that. And you
Mhm.
always have an example in the community showing you how to do, not exactly for the one that you are looking for, but you have others that can help you show how to configure the download tool. It is very easy to configure, but you have some tips and tricks there that's always good for you to know.
I would definitely recommend also looking at Postman. So
Mhm.
Postman is definitely a helpful website, and the cool thing, it generates the code. Like if you wanna like play Sherlock Holmes and try to understand what's going on in the underlying code, you can generate that code from Postman and see maybe like something's going on with that call that you need to include in the download tool. Like the download tool will make curl requests, right? So if you generate that curl code, you can understand like does that API need headers? Does that API need some kind of authorization token and things like that?
Yeah, and for the gallery APIs itself is always good to also take a look in the gallery API documentations Alteryx provide, and there you also have a place to you can interact with the API via website if you don't know really well how to do it already directly from the output designers, so you can put there your keys and just test it if how the endpoints will work and what you can retrieve from there, and that way you can start your tests to see what will be useful for you and how you need to to construct that things. So it's a good place to you go and take a look. I put here in the chat.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
I
I think
just
if you have no sorry, Kate, but if you have no idea what Mark was saying related to the interact documentation, we have a webinar for that. So we have a webinar focus on gallery APIs on our YouTube channel, right? And have a
nice.
great person there talking about
Yeah, he's
pros
very
and cons.
handsome. I heard he was a model.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's true story,
I
guys.
think people go to his videos not just because of the content.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he needs to do other merchandise, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
He's
think
the
so
guy for
too.
do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a model.
Yeah.
Very famous in Japan. That maybe you have seen my foot there in some commercials, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I think talking about that, Fernando, because you were so good on the first part of the series, right? We've got season, what are we on? Season 3 this year. of the server series in Q3. It's going to be a 12-part server series that we're going to be doing. Sadly, Fernando will not be leading all of that. I
Yeah,
think to his
sadly.
relief. We may kill him off in what, episode 4? Is that what episode you're gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we can just keep a foot image from him in the video.
exactly, right? Exactly.
Something like
Yeah.
that would be good.
And I did throw in the chat, there's a company. So my suggestion, if you're working on APIs, is always check 2 things. Check for connectors to see if it's already built, right? That may be able to handle some basic things for you. And then another site that I actually love is called CData. They actually build out drivers. So the drivers can connect to API endpoints, or there may literally just be a driver for that data source that you're looking for. And then that makes it to where it's a more familiar way to connect to data. So that's very exciting. All right, guys, any closing comments that you have here, or any excitement in regards to our next session coming up?
I think a good question would be, what is our next session?
Or is
You
our
know the
next session?
topic? You know the topic for us?
It should be the acing the advanced certification. So we've got that one coming up here for TLT for Alteryx. So if you watched our episode where we talked about the core exam, right? And hopefully with our advice, you pass the core exam. We would love to see you as part of our next session, which that is actually the next one I just confirmed on the 21st at 3 p.m. right Eastern, and we'll actually have a special guest, Chris Lewis, that'll be joining us as well. So shout out to Chris on that one.
And I think we need to have one for Ace the Expert exam as well, since Thales has the certificates. Would be there only as an spectator for me to also Ace the Expert exam, right?
I think that's a happy hour one, right, Thales? Is that a happy hour one that we do?
We could do, but I actually talked about that in the Brazilian user group.
Oh
But
man, you're already giving away the
oh.
content.
No, but yeah, I think we can always talk about that. And I know, for example, we could also get some people, other aces, on board too. But yeah, that's a hard one. That needs a full hour, definitely.
That is an interesting one. I think no one can miss that.
Yeah,
No.
that one. So what are you gonna do, Thales? Or are you gonna do? Is that more of like a Twitch stream where you're gonna show us your mad skills now?
No, I cannot give away the cert like that, man. Come on.
Oh, I'm thinking you're coming up with the questions too. You're gonna have this this set up for
Like
as you'll be your study
yeah.
buddy. Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
No, yeah, but I think I can there are a lot of tips that could help. And that's because I'm someone who took the exam 3 times. So I know, like, I know the challenges. I definitely know the challenges of these exams. So I can relate to that, and maybe, instruct people to not make the same mistakes that I made, for example, right? And help them that way. Because it's a nervous, it's an exam that makes you nervous. I would say, at least for me, some people just, you know, they're cold as ice, so they don't really care, right?
yeah,
but I think it's an interesting topic, and we definitely need to engage the Alteryx community and the Alteryx users to take that exam, because it's a very nice learning experience. You learn so much from other areas in Designer that maybe you don't work in a daily basis, right? and and it's good. I mean, it's good mainly because of that. I would say, how
yeah,
much I learned from studying and taking the exam. it's pretty awesome.
That's really cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for today. We can't wait to see you next month. And that's for a couple of reasons, right? We're getting that much closer to Inspire. So we'll probably be talking a little bit about the sessions that we're going to be doing in person at Inspire. And don't forget, make sure to sign up, follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, right? So you can hear more about the amazing things that we're doing. Happy Thursday, everyone. And congrats again to Marcus.
To Thales as
Thanks,
well,
guys.
expert.
Exactly.
And Thales as
Congrats,
well, yeah.
guys. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Yeah, have a
Bye.
great
Thursday.
Thursday.
Bye.
Yeah.